Welcome back to another Spirit Island video. In this video, we're going to be talking about all 8 adversaries and my favorite adversaries and my least favorite adversaries. Over here, I have all of them listed. There are 8 adversaries in Spirit Island, starting off with my most favorite adversary, and it shouldn't surprise you, it is England. Now, England, when I first started playing Spirit Island, I didn't like England, but as I played the game more and more, I really enjoy what this adversary is doing. Um, and I think the main reason is I like that it rewards players for building towards that end game. Now, it's important to point out that that doesn't mean other strategies, like early aggressive strategies, aren't useful or aren't capable of winning the game. But I like that the adversary rewards players that like to scale towards that late game because you're able to unlock that full potential of your spirit. If I'm playing Snake, it's likely I'm going to get a couple turns where I'm at that 6 energy in 4 plays. Or if I'm playing Roots, I'm likely going to be at 6-3 or 4-4. Crazy development across the tracks. I think that that's really cool, and a lot of the other adversaries don't allow that. In addition, the adversary is really tough. Games go long. It's not a pushover adversary. It's most of the time you're not going to be able to hyper pocket and get ahead of the adversary. Now, of course, you can in some cases, but most of the time you can't. And that's one of the reasons why I really like this adversary. Um, a lot of players they don't like this adversary, and that's because of really the extra health combined with the adjacency builds. Tends to punish a lot of the fear and control based spirits like shadows or like Sunbright Whirlwind. There's a lot of spirits like that that are control based that tend to actually have issues with England, and those tend to be some of the more liked spirits. But England for me is my favorite spirit or my favorite adversary in Spirit Island. So looking at the next one here, the next one is going to be, I believe it's Russia. It's Russia or Scotland. They're both really awesome. I like Russia as my number two. Once again, it's very similar to England. It's going to be a very difficult challenge. Um, and really, the Russia games are the games where we actually tend to lose. Well, I shouldn't say tend to lose, but like there's a percentage, maybe it's like 5% or maybe 10% of games are lost, and that's with Russia. While the rest of the adversaries, we tend to have a very close win percentage or a very high win percentage. Um, so Russia always creates that threat. In addition, there are plenty of strategies against Russia that tend to be useful. So like blight healing, that's something that tends to be pretty bad across all adversaries. But against Russia, blight healing effects are pretty valuable, and that's because it allows you to um, essentially ignore that Russia 6 because you take the Ravage blight and then you can ignore Russia 6. In addition, Russia rewards the players for managing how much fear they're generating via that level 5, and it also rewards planning because you're pushing those explorers around, um, those unkillable explorers, and then setting up those lands with 3 explorers to set up ravages. There's just a lot of interesting moments where you have to think with Russia that a lot of the other adversaries they don't have. I also love that Russia has extra beasts, so for those beast users, they have more tools or when they're trying to combat the invaders. As I mentioned earlier, Scotland is my number 3 adversary, and Scotland's definitely on the easier end, especially compared to the top two. But what I really like about Scotland is it's a very fair adversary. Um, like there's no unkillable explorers or unkillable building, not unkillable, but just really durable buildings, or it doesn't punish you for playing a control spirit. Really, just everything about Scotland, it's pretty fair. I think the only unfair thing is the level 6 rule combined with back to backs. It's like if you have a stage 2 Sands Ravaging, and then your next card is like a Sands Mountain in the build. Well, Scotland 6 is a town, and then immediately build in those lands. So it'll go from an empty land to a town city, which can be kind of unfair, but outside of that, everything else about the adversary is very fair. Defense is good, isolate is very strong, aggressive strats are good. Really, there's just nothing that isn't cheesy about this adversary, and that allows for pretty much any spirit to play into it and have a pretty solid game plan and a pretty solid matchup which is why I really like the Adversary. Also, the Adversary rewards players for scaling long, just like England. It's going to go it's going to go at least into that early stage three. I think it's like turn six or turn seven, and I tend to like those types of games. Okay, so these are my top three adversaries. I guess this would be like my S tier, like the adversaries I would like to always play. Looking at my, I guess it would be like B tier, like A B tier, like my S. So my number four, this is where it might surprise you. Well, I guess mining is probably my solid number four here, and this is the new adversary from the Nature Incarnate expansion, and I really like HME because it is one of the only adversaries that pretty much always pushes that blight card. Um, a lot of spirits they end up having to take at least I'd say about 2 to 3 blight, regardless of the spirit, because they want to turn off that HME level 6 roll, and that means they need that 3 blight. But they tend to always take that 2 blight, and that's one of the reasons why I like the adversary, because it's going to push blighted, it's going to flip that blight card, and the game is going to get fairly difficult. The reason why I have it here and not higher up on my list is because HME tends to always, and I told them this during playtesting, but it always ends at that very last stage two. So I'll just show you what I'm talking about here. So this last stage three here, it's like this is when HME like is over. It's like right here, right at the end of that stage two, the stage three explore there. Maybe it builds, but right here is where the game is. It never goes any further, and HME tends to lose a lot of its pressure right after the salt card. So it tends to be a little bit, I shouldn't say too easy, because I actually lose games of HME, or I have lost games. Maybe it's like 1% of games if we're just kind of messing around. Um, like if you're taking like actual solid spirits into it and people are comfortable with the adversary, we tend to not lose these types of games. Um, but yes, that would be my only complaint is I wish it was a little bit more challenging after the Soul card, because really Habsburg Mining loses a lot of steam. But really, I just like all the interactions and that early mid game, um, which makes the adversary fairly fun to play. It's also new. It might drop as I become more experienced with it. But I mean, me and Ray, we played so many games of the adversary during playtesting. I'm surprised it's not old for me anymore. I know Ray absolutely hates playing the adversary whenever he plays with us now. He's just completely adversive to this adversary. So okay, looking at so we did my top four here. This is what might surprise people, and it's Habsburg Livestock is actually my number five. And as you guys probably have seen in my previous videos, I actually have Habsburg Livestock as my least favorite adversary, and or it used to be. It's my opinion has changed, and I think that's mainly because I like that Habsburg livestock games are really grindy. They tend to go fairly long, usually into, I would say about, this is how far they go. I would say about mid stage three. And there tends to be some threats. I would say right around here is where threats tend to end. Now there's definitely some things I don't like about the adversary. Like I don't like how there's a board reset at level 5. Um, the escalation is also fairly punishing if you're not taking blight, similar to HME, but HME feels a lot better than the Habsburg escalation. I mean, I also don't like the extra damage because I'm more of a defensive player, and I don't like the lost condition because the lost condition can really screw players really quickly. But I think overall it's definitely grown as an adversary for me just because the games tend to go long and they allow the players to kind of build up their spirits and to reach that end game potential, which I think is really, really cool. I think, I mean, there's changes I would make to the adversary. Like, for instance, I would probably like rework the loss condition, and I would likely I mean, there's a lot of things I'd probably rework. Like I know a lot of players hate the durable. I actually like the durable rule, but like I said, people don't like that rule. So that would probably get changed. I don't have a problem with the level 5 if it came a little bit earlier, because it's coming on turn 5. Either you're going to be very far ahead or it's not going to matter. And I think if you're really far ahead and then get hit by level 5, it's a big feel bad, and it's something that I wish could be changed. But I'm not going to focus too much on what I would change with the adversary because I do enjoy it. Okay, so we are at number 6 now, and number 6 is going to be Prussia. So what I like about Prussia is the game is so simple. I just need to focus on trying to kill the invaders as fast as I can. I need to be very efficient, and that's what I love about this adversary. Now, the adversary could be very swingy if your coastal lands tend to come up as 2 of the land types, and then you have an early coast. Actually, the board D is not a good example. Let's choose a different one. Let's go with let's choose board C because this just happened to me in a recent video where you end up having this town on land 3. Oh, I can't actually create buildings, can I? If I drag here. Oh, there we go. There we go. So if that early stage 3 tends to be like Sands Mountain, for instance. Oh, I can't even copy and paste. There we go. Okay, so if it's like Sands Mountain, which is what happened to me in the video, I'm having 2 of my coastal lands coming up. And now, if that first stage 2 is coastal, that means both of that land 3 and that land 2 are coming up for a second time. And that can be very problematic. It can create for some swingy games. And I tend to hate games that are swingy in nature. Not saying every explorer is going to be your worst explorer or that worst set of explorers, but when it does happen, it's a big feel bad. But I do like that these games tend to be on the quicker end. If I'm playing with a group of friends and we only have maybe like 45 minutes to play, and this is if it's in person, 45 minutes or an hour, this is a great adversary to play. Um, and then usually online, we can knock this adversary out in about 20 or 30 minutes with just a couple players. Okay, looking at number 7, and this is where we go to my C tier here. And let's set this up. Yes, this is like my C tier. And that's Sweden. And I've never been a fan of this adversary just because it's so front loaded and it's diff 8. It's a solid diff 8 9. Um, really, the adversary is really vulnerable to control effects, fast damage. It completely demolishes most defensive tools unless it's like defend 3 is really important or defend usually like 5 or like if you don't have defend 3, if you have defend 2 and 4, you're going to be really sad against this adversary. Um, but it heavily rewards players that are spirits that can use those skips because, like I said, the adversary is all about ravaging, right? If you do large damage ravages, you're adding extra blight, and then if you're ravaging, you have to add that adjacent town, and then it kind of snowballs in a way. So like if you have a ravage skip, this adversary is like completely trivialized. If you're fast control, fast damage, it's very trivialized. If you're a defense, it tends to be a fairly difficult adversary. Not like you're going to lose the game, but probably like this difficulty rating would probably be around 10. And if you're like fast control, it's probably around 6 to 8. Um, I don't despise the adversary. It's just a lot of times, like after that first stage 2 card that gets flipped, I tend to know if the game is going to be very easy or very hard, just based on the setup explorers and ravages. A good example of this is if I'm playing one of the new boards. If I'm playing board G here with Sweden, the board will look like this. We have Town Town, and this is the best board with Sweden. I should probably do that Sweden guide video at some point so I can help people out. Light here, light from the box, so it looks like this. So as you can see here, with Sweden, if the starting explorer is wetland, I'm going to be terrified, right? I'm going to be facing down these 2 city lands. It's going to be very problematic for me. But now, if the starting explorer is sands, it's going to be extremely easy game for me. And this is board G where this is the best for you, where you have like this really bad wetland explorer, but then you have access to a really nice sand explorer or jungle explorer. And that's why I think board G is your best board into the adversary. While board C, on the other hand, they tend to have these city lands can pop up on all land types. the board tends to look like this with Sweden. So no matter what you're facing, that that turn one city ravage, regardless of the explorer. So depending on the board, depending on the explorers, the game can be easier or harder if you're board G, while board C it's very constant. So I feel like board selection matters a lot more into these adversaries, or into this adversary than some of the other ones. And finally, we have France. And France, I'll put it in C tier. It's not like I absolutely hate playing the adversary, but it's definitely one of my least favorite adversaries in the game. And a couple reasons. The first reason is it tends to be too easy, and it's similar to like Sweden, in that a lot of Sweden's difficulty is how bad is that starting explorer. France, it's really like a diff 6 to 8, but all of the difficulty is tied to trying to stay underneath this really unfair loss condition. And I can't stay into the town limit. Um at first I liked it, but the more and more I play with it, it just sucks. For instance, if you get like an early coastal explorer, you can be in a lot of trouble. In addition, there's a lot of events that can just screw you, by adding towns, or maybe like you're playing, and you flip the map makers event that's going to add extra explorers, which is going to cause extra builds. So the adversary, like it just auto kills players a lot of times, if those bad things happen. Now the adversary tends to be very easy when they don't, which is why it's like it's going to be like a 6 or it's going to be an instant loss. And I don't like that it's that there's just two polarized spots, right? There's no like there's no 11 a 10-11 area, right? Where like with Russia there's a lot of explorer booms, or like with England there's a lot of trying to keep that capital, that loss condition from reaching 7 buildings, and there's that tension. Really it's just an instant loss effect, and I just find that to be not really enjoyable. In addition, so one of the reasons why I don't like Prussia is Prussia forces the player to be very efficient, and France is the exact same way, right? You have to be playing like effects that impact the board directly, like blight healing. Nope, you can't play blight healing. That's going to be something that's just not useful here. Um, you would think disease would be pretty helpful, but there's so many disease ignore effects in that event deck where you really can't rely on disease with France, because there's always that chance that you get that disease ignore and then they have a bunch of extra builds and then you're just dead. Um, so yeah, that's really why I don't like France. It's just the swinginess. This is probably the adversary that we lose the most to. It's really France, HME, and Russia are like the big three. Like Russia, it's probably like maybe 5%. Once again, it depends on if we're playing our main spirits. But nowadays we just play a bunch of random, like the random garbage or the random weak tier spirits. So we tend to lose a little bit more as of late. Um, but you have like Russia, HME is like what, one, maybe 1 to 2%, and then France is probably around 5 to 10%. Once again, if players aren't playing spirits that can keep that town count low in a timely manner. But I think this is actually the only adversary in the game that can beat any spirit some percent of the time. Um, I'm not sure exactly what that percent is, and what do I mean by that? I mean, if I'm playing like Stone, right? This is a spirit that I claim to have 100% win rate into every adversary, right? I am pretty sure if there is somebody piloting France, like if they got to set up the entire invader deck, the entire event deck, the entire all of my drafts, I'm pretty sure, like if they're playing France, I'm pretty sure that they can beat any spirit in the game. And this is something that I kind of, it's just like a little experiment that I want to do at some point, because like Stone, I know can beat France. I say 100% of the time because that's how it feels like. But what happens if you get the absolute worst luck everywhere? Now, of course, this would be like the game that is like what you play that one game in over like maybe 10,000 France games. Not saying I've played that much or do I ever play on playing that much France games, but like that one game where you get map makers turn two, or yeah, turn three map makers, and turn one or turn, was it the very first event you have like wave of reconnaissance, second would be like map makers, and then frontier calls, or and then you just never draft a minor or a major card, or you never can draft a good minor or major, like stuff like that, where all of the RNG is controlled, um, then I wonder if Spirit can't actually beat the adversary. Like I feel like Scotland, like even if I get worse RNG with Stone, I'm very confident that I can still win, and that's just because Stone is just very cheesy. But like France, this is the one adversary where I'm not sure if that's the case. So if you like this video, like, subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys in the next video.